I'm so sorry that my co-presenter, Chandan, cannot be with us in person. He emailed me this morning and said that he was feeling a little sniffly and had a little bit of a cold, but still could join us virtually. So, Chandan, thanks so much for joining us virtually from your home in San Francisco.
Thanks so much for accommodating me. And yeah, I am a little bit down with a cold today, so you might see me slipping a little bit.
Well, I thank you for not sitting on stage and breathing on me. So I think for everyone, it's a win-win. So Chandan, as I mentioned, is the co-founder and president of CoinTracker. CoinTracker just raised a Series A at a staggering $1.3 billion unicorn valuation, which is unusual for a Series A, led by Excel. And so we're very proud to have them in the Initialized portfolio. Chandan, we're here to talk about taxes and crypto, but I'd like to learn a little bit about you. What brought you to the world of crypto? What attracted you to it? And I know you started CoinTracker almost 5 years ago now, and I'd love to hear about what your life was like before that.
For sure. I actually was working as a product manager at Google before this and was fairly skeptical of cryptocurrency, believe it or not. I had actually worked on a small integration between Google and Coinbase in 2014. And that was kind of my first introduction to actually owning some Bitcoin, having my own wallet, and basically thought nothing of it. And then fast forwarded 3 years to 2017 and was looking, kind of opening up my crypto wallets again and seeing what was going on. And my previously super tiny amount of Bitcoin was now a 10x larger amount of Bitcoin. And so I was kind of giving second thought to the space. And it was really actually diving down the fintech space and working on the traditional finance rails of ACH and Swift network, which are super slow, super inefficient, not built for the internet era. That kind of sucked me back down the cryptocurrency rabbit hole. And fast forward 5 years, here we are.
Well, you skipped over. I read online that you started a coffee shop. Is that true?
It is true. Yeah, I think my entrepreneurial streak started a little bit before CoinTracker. So in college, actually, I started a coffee shop as kind of like a late night eatery for students who were looking for a place to hang out after a lot of the nearby coffee shops had closed.
So the hook was that it was open especially late. Was there any special dish on the menu that attracted the late night crowd?
There were some great coffee dishes, but yeah, it was kind of having a student social space with art and music and like seating and a place to hang out instead of just kind of everyone doing work in their own dorm rooms. That was the hook, and it was actually really popular. I think it's still alive and active today, Cabot Cafe.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, you've graduated from the coffee shop. I'd love to talk a little bit about the beginning of CoinTracker. You guys did the YC program and Initialized invested during your YC tenure. What attracted you to YC, and what was the atmosphere like for crypto back in 2018?
YC had a great brand back then, as it does now, and we were sort of looking for some validation for our idea and some backing and support for what we were doing. And it's funny to see how far crypto has come now. But back in 2017, just to remind folks who maybe weren't in crypto at that time, when I was leaving my job at Google, everyone, like many people, told me I was crazy, I shouldn't do it. Crypto is a total scam. Like, why are you throwing your life away? Blah, 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 this and that. And so having some validation from applying to YC was definitely really helpful as a confidence booster and a signal that we were onto something that was actually valuable and potentially could have a really large impact. At the time, we really thought we had botched our YC interview, but it ended up working out. And the initial product that we pitched was actually very similar to what we're doing today, which was around cryptocurrency portfolio tracking, and eventually we added on the tax compliance component. And we were super grateful to YC for really pushing us hard to figure out product market fit, drive growth, and we started making revenue during YC, which was really helpful. And it also brought us to Gary Tan and Initialized, which has been like a really huge part of our journey too.
Well, you mentioned that you thought you had botched the interview. I'm curious about that because I think one of the struggles that founders have is how they can effectively pitch to investors. And I'm curious as to why you thought you had botched it and how you were able to overcome that and get into YC nonetheless.
So to set the scene, for those who haven't done YC interviews, basically it's a super high time pressure environment. It's only 10 minutes long. And basically there's a panel of YC partners that just barrage you with questions nonstop for 10 minutes. There's no time to breathe or think. It's kind of rapid fire. And so we walked into the room. It was, I mean, before we could barely even sit down, it was just question, 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 question. And 7 minutes in to our 10 minutes, so 70% of the way through, one of the partners asked us if we had a website or if we had built anything. And I was kind of internally sort of like face palming, like, oh my God, these guys don't even know that we have a website. Like, we're so screwed. Like, we're totally not going to get through this. And they're pretty intense, sort of really poker faced. So you really just, I felt like we were totally failing. And we're like, yeah, we have a website. And they're like, can we see it? And so my co-founder, John, who's our CEO, like opens his laptop and is like giving them a live demo, totally unprepared of the website. And all four of the partners get up, walk around the table and are just like hovering over his shoulders while he like live demos this website. And then by the time, before he can kind of finish the demo, the interview's over and we walk out and there's just no way we got this.
Well, I didn't hear you say that the website broke, so that's a good thing. So you got into YC, and then can you talk a little bit about? I know you had an interesting experience pitching Initialized as well.
Initialized was amazing. So Gary, I think, was actually the first person who reached out, one of the partners at Initialized, and we were sort of fanboying already because he had been one of the first, if not the first, seed investor in Coinbase. So he had a strong reputation in the YC community, and he had already taken a bet on crypto, which especially at that time was pretty rare. So we were excited, and I went into his office, and I had no idea what I was doing. I had never pitched a VC before, so I had nothing prepared, no presentation, no deck, no materials, no nothing. But it just so happened that we were launched on TechCrunch that exact day that I had the meeting with him. I believe this was Valentine's Day 2018. And so Gary, super friendly, really, really nice. And he's just like, hey, so do you guys have any plans of launching a tax service or monetizing this? And I was like, yeah, just open the homepage of TechCrunch. It's right there. And that ended up being a good enough pitch for Gary. And he had already actually used the product and kind of had already did diligence to us. So I was kind of nervous, but he opens the door, actually. This is kind of a funny story. And he yells down the hallway, like, hey, Alexis, like, get in here. You have to see this. And he was referring to Alexis Ohanian, who is now running 776 Ventures, but was at the time a partner at Initialized as well. And so Alexis walks in, and now I'm sort of like extra nervous, like these two partners, people I really look up to. Alexis started Reddit. And Alexis is completely not paying any attention to what I'm talking about. So again, I'm just thinking, oh my God, we're totally failing here. Like, doesn't care at all about CoinTracker. But what I found out later was that my co-founder, who was at our office, was basically seeing record amounts of traffic on Google Analytics. And he's like, what the hell is going on? Like, he was messaging me. And it turns out Alexis had been sort of live tweeting the meeting that we had, just pointing his entire sort of social media presence to CoinTracker, which we really appreciated. Initialized has again and again kind of thrown its weight behind us, especially in the early stages when we were relatively unknown. And another example of that is Gary kind of highlighting a lot of the issues around cryptocurrency and taxes and CoinTracker through his YouTube presence. So we've always really appreciated that.
Well, we've appreciated you. And, getting to a Series A at this scale is unusual, but I happen to know because I've seen behind the scenes that it wasn't all smooth sailing. And I remember a time during what we all remember as crypto winter. You were walking through the office looking really depressed, and I know that there's a little bit of struggles that you had during that time. Can you talk a little bit about what you guys went through and how you pulled through it to get to this point?
For sure. I mean, we've talked about this. It's sort of from the outside, everything looks great, and you have this big valuation and this and that, and overnight success. But yeah, the reality is it's almost never like that, and that's definitely the case for us. So we raised, just to paint the picture here, we raised a less than $2 million seed round for CoinTracker in 2018, led by Initialized. And then we didn't really do any fundraising since then until basically earlier this year. And that's when we raised that $100 million Series A. So there was a pretty significant gap of almost 4 years where we had no extra fundraising. And the kind of story behind that was we were trying to be very careful and methodical about ensuring that we were building a sustainable long-term business that could actually sustain itself and be profitable and find product market fit. And so we were really grinding through the crypto winter, 2018, 2019, 2020. They were, as folks here probably know from being in the crypto space, they were not hyper growth years like 2021 was. And so there were definitely some dire moments, and there were times where, should we keep running this company? Should we think about, what do we have to do to keep operations running when COVID is hitting and people aren't filing taxes, and the tax deadline from the IRS is being extended for the first time in U.S. history. A lot of these things hit us at the same time, and it was definitely super brutal. And luckily, I think we and other crypto companies that have really taken a long-term view have come out stronger, and now business is growing super fast. But those years, some of the years in between were definitely a bit of a struggle.
And during that time, did you try to get to profitability? Did you think about acquisitions? Share your experience with the audience on how you were able to overcome it.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely have been acquisition offers on the table for CoinTracker in the past from a variety of people, and we were also sort of talking about this before. It's kind of like when you're in that gray area of fog and you don't know how things are going or how they're going to go or if things are going to get better or crypto winter is going to end, it can be really tempting to want to pursue sort of any acquisition offer. It's like, if anyone will pay anything for this, like, thank God, that's better than total failing. But in kind of retrospect, I heard someone else say this too, and I definitely think it's true, is that when you're really close to that line of finding product market fit and kind of getting into hypergrowth mode, it can be really hard to tell if you are, kind of an inch away from that or a mile away from that. And then as soon as you cross it, it's sort of like, like product market fit just pulls you in, and it's sort of like a gravitational force, and everything kind of goes totally crazy. So kind of when we were in that gray period and we didn't really know, and it's like, there's these acquisition offers, what should we do? Should we take them? So there were definitely like some times when everything's on the line, and you don't want to let your employees down. You don't want to spend 4 years, 5 years of your work kind of go down the drain. But ultimately, we did kind of feel like there was a potential opportunity for cryptocurrency to really change the world. And we, if you stick with that thesis, there's just a whole variety of tools and services that people are going to need. So we kind of felt like, from a first principles view, what we were doing was going to be valuable, and we kind of wanted to see that out as much as we could. So we really sort of cut all of our expenses. We had a war room with everyone in the company where we were kind of very upfront. Like, here's the situation. Here's how much runway we have left. Here's what we need to do to kind of get out of this. We launched a new product and tried to monetize in new ways. It was kind of all hands on deck. And ultimately, we didn't take any of those acquisition offers. We really doubled down on trying to get to profitability. We did achieve that, and now we've scaled the team like in the past year from 10 to 55, and growth is kind of through the roof. And we've partnered with all these people, so things have really changed now. But it was not always like that.
Well, and you said something interesting that I want to go back to a little bit, is in terms of your own perspective on crypto, and what areas you think are more exciting to you, and which ones you're a little bit more skeptical on.
For sure. I think this happens in like the cyclical nature of crypto, where when there's sort of these boom cycles and hype cycles and things like that, there are all these projects come out, and it's very exciting. It's like the energy is palpable, and all these people are getting into Web3, and it's just like a totally lively environment. But the downside of that is, personally, I feel like it's sometimes harder to tell, like start to separate the wheat from the chaff, and what is really legit and what is going to be a generational technology that changes the world, and what is kind of the latest 15 minutes of fame sort of hype thing. And so my personal view, I'm pretty open about this, is like, I'm very bullish on Bitcoin. I dollar cost average into Bitcoin every day, and I think it is a global sort of digital native currency that is going to change the world. And the way I pose that to people sometimes who are more skeptical is, imagine you were to wake up tomorrow, 50 years in the future. What's the one asset that you would take with you? And when I think about that, it's sort of very clear to me that if I had to take a bet on one asset that would be sort of popular 50 years from now, it's Bitcoin. And if you don't believe that, I mean, imagine 1,000 years down the line. It's not going to be US dollars in 1,000 years. I guess the next set after that would be tools like Ethereum. And I would say I'm sort of cautiously optimistic about what kinds of Web3 use cases might come out of that. I know a lot of people are working on a lot of interesting projects, whether they be dApps or DEXs or all the interesting things that are happening in the Ethereum ecosystem and other sort of related ecosystems. DeSci is another popular thing that's happening. I personally have a healthy dose of skepticism there still, because I personally haven't found any of those use cases to be something that I today find useful in my daily life. But the reason I'm cautiously optimistic is that it is a new sort of computing paradigm, and people are doing lots of interesting experimentation. There's a lot of openness and willing to try ideas, and that makes me hopeful that perhaps there will be some really interesting use cases that are used. And then I think I have a healthier dose of skepticism for the long tail of kind of altcoin projects.
But you did admit to owning a little bit of Solana, is that right?
That's true. Yeah, I do have a 1% Solana holding kind of as a hedge, in case Ethereum doesn't end up working out.
Well, you said you dollar cost average into Bitcoin every day, and I can't help but think, as someone who's been struggling with doing their taxes before the tax deadline, that must be a pain in the butt to actually track, which I think is a good segue into what CoinTracker does. How does CoinTracker help us with how painful that process can be?
Right. So CoinTracker is cryptocurrency portfolio tracking and tax compliance made simple. And for those who haven't used it, basically all you do is you can connect read-only access to your cryptocurrency wallets and exchanges, whether they be custodied on an exchange like Coinbase or Binance, or self-custodied on like a Ledger wallet or Exodus or things like that. And we'll basically sync your entire transaction history retroactively and continuously going forward, again, securely in a read-only access manner. Reconcile all your transaction history from different exchanges, wallets, coins, DeFi, NFTs, etc. And we support hundreds of different exchanges, thousands of different cryptocurrencies. And for depending on which country you're in, we'll kind of output the tax forms that you need to file. So for those of you who are US taxpayers and are excited about next Monday's April 18th tax deadline, we can basically take the nightmare out of doing this. And especially if you're using more than one wallet or exchange, or if you've gotten into OpenSea style NFT transactions or more complicated DeFi stuff, it's just a nightmare to do this by hand. So CoinTracker just makes that simple.
Well, I've actually personally been audited before, and I have to admit that I wasn't particularly impressed with the rigor of the auditor's evaluation of my tax history. So, I know you've stated that almost 96% of people who hold crypto haven't done their crypto taxes yet. Why should we? How are they going to figure out? How are they going to figure out where I've kept all my crypto?
I get asked this all the time, and so yeah, I think back to that auditor who you weren't particularly impressed by. I think the thing that's tricky about crypto is that sometimes people assume that it is too complicated for the government to figure out, or that it's private, or things like that. In reality, Bitcoin, for example, the blockchain there is an indelible, permanent ledger. It's a permanent, transparent public record of your entire transaction history that's out there forever for anyone to see at any time. And so there's a variety of ways that government organizations and tax authorities like the IRS can tap into that, and they're already doing so. The first is through chain analytics software. So like Palantir Analytics, Coinbase Analytics, chain analysis. I mean, IRS has public contracts with a lot of these types of organizations and companies. So even if you might think that they personally might not be data scientists, sort of super savvy, they're using tools that can figure this stuff out. The second thing is it's permanent, right? So this is going to be on chain forever. And so even if things aren't figured out today or right now or this year, they could be figured out 20 years from now and retroactively come after you. And that's definitely not a scenario you want to be in, especially because the IRS statute of limitations for an audit is by default only 3 years. But if you don't file, that statute of limitations increases to forever. So you're kind of doing yourself a pretty big disservice by not filing something. And even if it's super complicated and you don't exactly know what you're doing, it's like just file an extension. It's fast and it's free, and just get set up to use software like CoinTracker or something else so that you can get all this stuff in order and get that statute of limitations kicked in. So I always tell people, the biggest mistake you can make around cryptocurrency taxes is not filing anything. And that also applies not only to people who have, big bags and big gains, but even if you have losses, you really want to claim those losses. Otherwise, you're just donating money to the IRS that you could instead use to offset other gains or use to offset income and things like that.
And I read that there was also a regulatory change that was coming along the horizon other than the extension of the statute of limitations. Is that right?
Yeah, so there's a couple things that are happening. To kind of wrap up the answer to the last question, the other thing is like, on November 15th, 2021, the Biden infrastructure bill passed in the US. And that has a specific provision that's going to impact cryptocurrency taxes in that every US based cryptocurrency exchange is going to be required to start reporting the taxable events of cryptocurrency holders, both to those users and to the IRS. And that's going to happen for starting with the 2023 calendar year for those taxes due in 2024. So that's a pretty significant change. And kind of referencing that number you mentioned earlier, we recently did a survey showing that only 4% of US based cryptocurrency holders had filed their taxes year to date so far. So there's a pretty significant gap in compliance there, and that's likely to change pretty substantially. And the other thing is that the IRS has also started sort of subpoenaing various exchanges. So they did this to Coinbase and got records of a lot of those taxpayers' cryptocurrency transaction history and started sending out letters to tens of thousands of taxpayers about their cryptocurrency usage. So this is now something that is becoming more scaled and going to impact more and more cryptocurrency users, which is just another reason to kind of get this headache dealt with.
Okay, so since I'm in that 96% of people that haven't, I haven't even accessed my Coinbase account and sent it to my tax person. What should I do, and how much is it going to cost me if I use CoinTracker?
So what you should do is you should get your cryptocurrency exchanges and wallets, sync them to CoinTracker, which is all free, and you can do that in 10 minutes. And then based on your transaction history and how many transactions you have, there are various sort of tiers of CoinTracker. There's actually a fairly generous free tier that the majority of cryptocurrency users can just take advantage of, and it costs absolutely nothing. And then for more advanced users who have lots of transactions, there's sort of a tiered structure, sort of ranging between sort of like $59, $199, and more. And we also have a discount for everyone here at Startup Grind. So if you're new to this and doing this for the first time, maybe we can paste this somewhere else later too, but there's a discount, which is cointracker.io/A/grind. So if you use that, cointracker.io/A/grind, it's 10% off every single plan for everyone who's a new user.
Awesome, thank you. I'm actually going to do it. And I'm curious, as the government gets more and more savvy on crypto transactions, and obviously there's value to be had in collecting taxes on the trades, where do you think regulatorily things are going to head in the U.S.?
So I'm sort of speculating here as to what may happen. But if we kind of look at the history of crypto, right, it's gone from $0 to $2 trillion of market cap over the last decade or so. And if you're sort of crypto bullish like I am over the long run, who knows what happens in the short term. But in the long run, I sort of conceivably think that crypto could go from a $2 trillion to $10 trillion plus market cap over the next decade. And at that point, the kind of tax revenues here become really substantial, not just for the US government, but for every government, because this is a really global technology. And that becomes something that you can't just ignore because it is sort of existential to running the operations of these different countries' budgets and things like that. So I think that we are going to see an increased focus on this because it's potentially going to be the biggest revenue opportunity that any government has ever had.
And aside from the tax focus, are there any other regulatory areas that you see the government focusing on?
Yeah, actually, there are a couple different legislators, including in Congress. Senator Lomas from state of Wyoming, for example, has been pushing a couple different cryptocurrency changes, including tax changes, but also outside of tax related to cryptocurrency. So some examples of that include a de minimis exception, which means basically if you're buying small numbers of items like that are not high in cost, then you don't have to deal with taxes, which is a huge burden if you're trying to buy small ticket items, sort of like, let's say, sub $600 in a year. So there's sort of a tentative proposal to change that rule and kind of reduce the tax nightmare for small ticket items. There's a provision around trying to clarify how staking income works. So for all those folks who are staking and into ETH2 and all these kinds of things, right now there's a bit of a regulatory gray area around how that's dealt with and how that's taxed. And so there's been a push for more clarity around that. So there definitely are other areas that are like, being pushed for more regulatory clarity, whether related to taxes or just more generally around what are securities and how is this exactly going to be regulated based on Biden's latest executive order. So there's sort of definitely a push in the government to kind of get this stuff figured out and put more attention around it, because it's too big to ignore now.
Totally. And what's on the horizon for CoinTracker? What do you guys have planned with the $100 million war chest that you've amassed?
Yeah, I mean, we're basically really, really focused on our core mission, which is increasing the world's financial freedom and prosperity. And kind of imminently, what that means for us is both continuing to partner with all of the top cryptocurrency wallets, exchanges, partners, DeFi, NFT sort of service providers. We've done this with TurboTax, we've done this with H&R Block, we've done this with Coinbase, we've done this with OpenSea, and we're going to continue to replicate that model with more and more partners, both domestically in the US and globally, as cryptocurrency adoption continues to just blow through the roof around the world. We are going to continue to build a stellar team of A players. And if anyone is interested in this domain, please hit me up, because we are hiring aggressively. And we're also going to continue to rapidly increase our product development cycle by adding more and more features that help people build wealth and optimize their taxes, not just once a year at tax filing time, which it is right now, but rather throughout the year, so that you can actually make more intelligent decisions year round. And by the time tax filing season comes around, everything is already optimized.
And one of our topics is NFT taxes. Are those treated any differently? Should we be doing anything differently for the NFTs we've purchased?
There are some like small nuances, but TLDR, at the end of the day, basically sync your wallets, whether they're ETH wallets, Solana wallets, etc., to CoinTracker, and we'll take care of calculating all those capital gains for you. So NFTs are fully supported in CoinTracker, and they work largely the same, where they're treated as property, and there's capital gains and capital losses based on the difference in the price that you buy something for and the price that you sell it for.
And is there a difference in terms of the holding period?
Holding periods still, like in the US, for example, you still have short-term and long-term capital gains, depending on whether you've held an asset for 12 months or less for short-term, which has typically a higher taxable rate, or over 12 months, which is a long-term holding, and then you have a lower taxable rate. So if you want to lower your taxes, trade less and hodl more.
Well, that's great advice. And any final words to the 96% of us out there in terms of how we can get with the program and become good tax-paying and law-abiding citizens?
I would say if there's one takeaway you have from this, it's don't let the IRS have an infinite statute of limitations to audit you. File something and kick off that timer on that 3-year statute of limitations. So file something with your crypto taxes. Don't skip it.
Thanks so much, Chandan. Can you share that discount code with us one more time so that I can write it down and for everyone sitting at home too?
Absolutely. Thank you again, everyone, for hearing us out here. And if you want to get started on getting your cryptocurrency taxes done really fastly and sort of really efficiently, check out cointracker.io/a/grind. cointracker.io/a/grind.
Thanks so much, Chandan. Thanks to everyone for joining us. Hope we can get our taxes filed and enjoy the rest of the conference.